if you are, when she stops at one of the places where I'm talking, if you let me know, I'll put it down, okay? I'm not expecting y'all to feel too cold. You're thinking it's summer. That's all right. That's where you're from. It's all right. When it gets to be summer here, y'all, we have like 115 heat index. No one wants to live here. No one. And we whine about it, just like we do about 50 degrees. If it's 50 degrees in Savannah, everyone puts their puffy coats on and their scarves.
Did we notice that?
Did you notice that? You go, what are you doing? Yeah.
It's like, what?
Yes, that's right. That's what they do. So, my name is Scarlett here, McCain. I'm so glad to see y'all tonight. It's a joy and a privilege to be here with you. It's Miss Saunders. She's going to take very good care of you. As we discussed earlier, she used to drive small children for a living, and she'd much rather drive you. She did it for a long time. She did it so long she doesn't want to drive children anymore, unfortunately. So, when you came to Savannah, they told you were going to drive on dead people, right? And walk on dead people? They didn't?
I never heard that.
You're driving and walking on dead people. And I'll do what I can to make that happen for you. You're welcome. You're welcome. So, if you want to take pictures tonight, which I highly encourage, I don't promise anything, but you should turn your flash off because you might get an apparition or an orb. I've been on bus loads where we get everything all night long, lots of orbs, lots of apparitions. I've been on them where we don't get anything. If you get truly disappointed, I have one orb on my phone. I have superstitious friends that say, Scarlett, it's red, you should get rid of it. Beggars can't be choosy. That's all I have to tell you. I've taken hundreds of pictures. I don't get a lot of orbs. This one's juicy. I'll keep it. Thank you very much. All right. So if you have any other questions like history or whatever, I will try to answer them for you if you need. But we're going to go on a ghost tour now. You ready here? Yes, ma'am. So my favorite love story that's a ghost story has to do with Juliet Gordon-Low. Do I have any former Girl Scouts on here? Oh, awesome. Okay. And y'all know she was born and raised here, and we're particularly proud of that fact, actually. It just thrills us here. But this story's not about her, it's about her parents. Her mother's name was Eleanor Kinsey. She was from Chicago. We called her Miss Nellie. Her father was William Washington Gordon. He was actually the second. But those doggone William Washington Gordons, they didn't label. There were four of them. You just have to know which one was which. Miss Nellie went to Europe in the early 1800s because that's where wealthy people went away from the heat, and they didn't want to die from yellow fever or malaria. She's in Europe at a ball, and she sees the most handsome man she's ever seen at the bottom of a staircase. He was so very handsome. He had a lovely new top hat on, but she couldn't find a chaperone to introduce her to him. I mean, she looked everywhere for him, and there was no one around. And when it looked like he was going to walk away, she put her honey on the banister and she slid all the way down to that handsome young man. She knocked him over. She crushed his new top hat. I call it love at first crush. I gotta tell you, try explaining that to 8th graders. I tour a lot of them because they actually are lucky. They get to come here for sociology for 8th grade. And you go, she couldn't talk to them, and they go, why? There was no chaperone, and they're like, huh? Very confused. Well, they had a love so deep and strong that Juliet wrote in her journals that Mama loved Daddy first, God second, and the children third. They must have had a really passionate love affair because she didn't believe in slavery and she married a man with slaves. So they had a lot of things against them, but they were married for over 50 years. When William Washington Gordon died, around 1905, Miss Nellie went to a mourning so deep, she said, I will never wear any color ever again, and I'm gonna stay in my room. I'm gonna read my love letters over and over again. I just want to see sweet Willie smile one more time. And her children were frantic. They're like, Mom, please, come out. Please. She's like, no, you don't understand. Well, a A few years later, she lay dying from failing health. That's what we called anything. It turns out she probably had congestive heart failure. Her son Arthur was there with his wife Margaret in that house right there on your left, in the upper right-hand bedroom, with their daughter Juliet, and it wasn't going well. So Margaret needed a breath of air, so she went out to the stairs to stand for a minute, probably fan herself. And she sees coming up the stairs the general who's been dead for quite some time. He tipped his hat at her and he walked through his wife's bedroom door. She goes, I didn't see it. I didn't see it. I didn't see it. Y'all gotta realize back then your husband could put you on something you might never come off of if you thought you was crazy. A few minutes later though, her husband came out and he said, my darling, my mother has passed. She goes, oh, I know. I just saw your daddy go through the bedroom door. I heard they had a really big fight about it. Oh, it must have been awful. But when they went downstairs, the butler who'd grown up with William Washington Gordon was sitting on the front stoop crying his eyes up going, oh, sir, ma'am, I don't expect you to believe me, but I just saw your daddy come down the stairs, and your mama was with him, and she looked like a young bride. And they got in a carriage right out front, and they left. Now, y'all don't have to believe my favorite love story about ghosts, but Arthur recorded it for the Library of Congress before he died, and Juliet wrote about it in her journals. My take on this is if you're lucky enough to be with your significant other for 50 years or more and you predecease them, I think it is your job to come back and get them. If you're on marriage number 2, 3, or 4, I think you get to pick your favorite. I'll let you know how that goes. I really do think you get to pick your favorite. My daughter always goes, Mom, was my dad your favorite? And I go, oh, that's so sweet, honey. Now, as we turn this corner, we're headed over to Trolly. Yes? Okay. All right, just want to make sure where I was. We're headed to the Sorrel Weed House. I want you to know a few things about that, and then I'll tell you more about it. But the Sorrel Weed House was built by Francis Sorrel in 1848. Now, Francis Sorrel was a very prosperous businessman, but he was from Haiti, y'all. He was from Haiti, and he denied his heritage. That means he passed for white, and they said he was cursed because of it, because he pretended to be something he wasn't. It was a pretty big deal. He's so rich that the pretty building with the arches right before that was his Arabian horse stable. He was very, very wealthy. In 1848, he had married the love of his life, Lucinda. She was 15 years old. She was the youngest of 3 daughters. I know, yeah, but back then, they expected you to get married, have a few children, and then die. 1848, people. They got married. They had 3 children. Lucinda died from yellow fever. Oh, wait. That guy's not supposed to be there. If the ghosts are nice, don't go with them. See, Sandra and I have this policy that we're not going to write up the paperwork, so if you disappear and your loved ones don't look for you, we're not looking either. I just want you to know. Hi.
Hello.
Don't take my people.
Oh, you're gonna leave me with them?
Yeah,
Do I get to shoot them?
for a minute.
No, I can't shoot them?
No, don't shoot
All
them.
right, fine. You're probably your way, you know. Hello, everyone. How are you? Good. I'm dead. That's how I am. I died here in 1979. No, that's it. 1779. I get confused. Sometimes, you know, when you're dead, days just linger on. You're like, what year is it? But then I saw the ugliest people ever in 1979. You were much prettier than they are, I've got to tell you. Especially you. So, let's see, the Siege of Savannah when I died. So that was 1779. Count D'Estaing and Casimir Pulaski had come down to say, you know what, let's just take that wee town. Well, the problem is that King George and us Highlanders, because my dad died in the Jacobite Rebellion, Yeah, so he said to all the Highlanders, okay, you're working for me now. So he said, okay, King Georgie. So we come down here, he says, go to the New World, defend the tiny town. I said, all right. You know, my 17 children and my wife and my mistress all left alone. Well, not my mistress. Anyway, so she kind of expected that, you know, was her wife or me. Anyway, so I said, okay. So we come down here, and of course the French and the colonials tried sneaking their ships up the waterways, which we crushed and burned, of course, because right around this area here, we built the Oglethorpe Redoubt all around the tiny town of Savannah, facing which way? You guessed it, south. So that's where they come from the swamp. Oh, defensive positions, geniuses all, you know, coming from the swamp to attack a town, but that's what they did. So October the 9th, at 4 in the morning, this huge fog rolls in. Well, that doesn't deter those geniuses. They said, let's attack anyway. So they did. In the bright white French uniforms in the swamp, every single one of them was lost. Oh, it was hilarious. And we were picking them off like frogs in a bucket. Brilliant. Everyone's dying. Pulaski says, you know what? I've got 200 strong horses. Let's just go faster. Because that'll work, right? Against cannons. You know, no. Silly men. Silly, I'll tell you. 1,000 men died, 500 wounded in this 1 hour. Because, you know, Pulaski's coming in and we had a secret weapon. Never before seen on the battlefield. Evan, can you guess? Anyone guess what it was? No one has a clue. All right, it was grape shot. Now, grape shot never been foreseen on the battlefield. Now, we Scots invented a game called golf. Don't know what if you know it about it or not. But with this wee tiny little balls. Anyway, made of metal, put them in a cannon, fire, kind of like a blunderbuss. So that's what it was. Well, Pulaski gets hit in a horrible place, right in the groin, by grape shot. I know, horrible. Took him how many hours do you think it took him to die? Minutes? Was he dead? No, 2 days. 2 days screaming about his mama. Oh, mama, I wish you were here. But no, she didn't come. And I would know. So, anyway, all the gunpowder and the fog and the men screaming and the horses winning. Poor horses. Anyway, everyone's dying. There's this men stacked like cordwood. There's a moat right in front of the redoubt filled with blood. And I fall right in. Like an Irishman. I know. Yeah, horrible thing that. So, that's how I died. I drowned in blood. Yeah, great. Better than Pulaski. Much better, much quicker actually. So that's my story, and now I'm off. You know, I think I might go hang out with Molly. Do you know about the Sorrel House? It's right here. I get to hang out every day with Molly. Margaret, she's not so much fun, but Molly's cute. She's dead, but so am I. So is my wife. All right, off with you then.
You never know who you're going to meet.
Yeah.
So, at the Sorrel house, I told you about Francis Sorrel denying his heritage. And he'd lost his beloved wife, Lucinda. So he invited Matilda, her older sister, to keep house for him. Matilda was 21. Her prospects had dwindled. They got along very lovely. And this too always makes the 8th graders uncomfortable. He proposed to her and married her too. They had 2 more children. And they gave the most beautiful parties right there. They had the pineapple on the front porch. They laid out banquet tables in the back. But Matilda had something we call OCD today. And she just couldn't handle all of the details. So she had a wonderful maidservant named Molly that I heard you just met, that he's obviously flirting with. And Molly handled all the details for her. Well, one day something was wrong and she didn't know what to do, and she went looking for Molly and she couldn't find her. She looked upstairs, downstairs, around the block. When she went to Molly's private room in the carriage house, she found her with her husband, Francis. Just let me enjoy this for a second. You know, we drove Sherman crazy with those when he was here. Every time we stepped out, if you can imagine that, all the women ring every church bell in the city. Ours are done automatically now. We have a computer up there that makes them ring at St. John's. Okay. Molly can't find her. I mean, Matilda can't find Molly. She finds Molly in the carriage house with her husband. Well, here's what happened. They say she was so angry. They called her crazy. She went up to the second floor where her bedroom was, and she threw herself out to the banquet tables below. And the back of that house, that's 3 stories down, because the basement comes out there full. I'll tell you this, Francis Sorrell buried her outside of his crypt in Laurel Grove. She's the old kind, I know. And so the Haitians said that's the second curse. But a few weeks later, they found Molly hanging in the carriage house. And everyone said she felt guilty. Well, did she? Because the ghost we hear in the carriage house goes, no, I didn't do it. Please don't. Please stop. So night after night, Molly's begging for her life in the carriage house. And night after night, Matilda's throwing herself off that second floor balcony. But wait, it gets better. Because around here, we have layers of ghosts. And on October 7th, 1779, the English soldiers' camp there were blown up by the French, and their disembodied bodies walked through there as well. So please go tour the Sorrell house. They need more people to pick up. Did you come here, anyone, for Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil? A few? Good. Because I'll tell you this, the younger they get, the less they know these days. And I said the other night that Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, the book, put us on the map for tourism. And they're like, what? I go, yes. People started coming because of that. In that house right there, the Mercer William house, in the left-hand parlor where the shutters are shut right now, there's a beautiful Tiffany lamp. Jim Williams shot Danny Hansford in 1981 in that room. When the police got there, Jim said he did it in self-defense, but they didn't find a gun. All true. He went to murder trial 4 times. The first time they found him guilty, he appealed. The second and third time, he was consulting a voodoo priestess named Minerva from South Carolina. He had mistrials, just like the movie, that's all true. And by the 4th time, they acquitted him after $1 million. But, y'all, they say he died. We think in that room because his ghost haunts the balcony out there smoking cigars. And his sister owns the house now, and if you tour it, it looks just like it did when Jim lived there. But you can't ask about the murder. Do you know why? Because this is the South, and because he was acquitted, they call it the unfortunate incident. Y'all, my ex-husband lives in Reno, and that's an unfortunate incident. No, and he's alive. I'm saying, I'm Southern, but we get this one wrong. That was murder. As we come right down here, we're headed toward Calhoun Square. Calhoun Square is where the Massey School is. If you did your history tour today, the 18th century schoolhouse built by Peter Massey, where all the poorest children in the city could go. Across the street from it is 432 Abercorn. Now, 432 Abercorn today is stunningly beautiful. But 3 years ago, the ceilings were still falling down in there. You could walk by, scrape the dusty window, and look up and see the chandeliers falling off. It was awesome. But then Sonia and I were going around there. It must have been December of 2019, right? And we saw this Christmas tree in the second window from the front door. And I said, oh my God, the ghosts are celebrating Christmas. So we circled to make sure we weren't crazy, because that could happen on a ghost tour. And it was true. And we found out the house had been bought, and they were renovating it. I will tell you this, the first contractors quit very soon, after the second and the third, and by the 4th contractors they had, I heard they only worked for like 3 hours in the daytime. But it is lovely, and I will tell you the story now. So this is the Massey School. All of this was a graveyard, y'all, before the Civil War. They buried slaves here and poor people. That was not here. We built it in 1869 off of the graveyard, and they sold it for $20,000 to a retired Union officer who moved in there with his wife, his daughter, and all of his servants. Unfortunately, after a few years, his wife died from yellow fever, and he was so heartbroken, he fired everybody that worked for him except the nurse, the cook, and the nanny. And he told them, I don't care what you do all day, but I don't want my daughter playing with those children from the Massey school right there. And every day when he came home, she was out there playing with the kids from the Massey school. So one day, to teach her a lesson she'd never forget, he tied her to a chair from the second window from the front door. And he told the nurse, the cook, and the nanny, if you let her go, I'll kill you. No one let her go. And that night when he got home, she was dead. And no one knows whether she died from heat stroke or dehydration. And no one knows who said something first. But he killed the nurse, killed the cook, and the nanny, and he buried them with his daughter in the side yard, and he left town. And he owned that home, the same family from Atlanta, for over 100 years. And it fell into disrepair. But the ghost that was seen over and over again was the little girl in the window. You can look her up on Google and YouTube. She's been seen that many times. The little girl in the second window from the front door. You can see why the Christmas tree totally freaked me out. Look it up, y'all. I can't tell you can stay there because that's actually a private residence. They think it's not haunted because they fixed it up. I toured them once and they said, well, we fixed it up. I go, I know, but did the ghosts know? Right here on your right is the Hamilton Turner. In the daytime, we told you it was the first house to get electric lights. That's all true. But Dr. Francis Turner used to perform autopsies right downstairs in that lit office in the early 1900s. Did you know it was illegal to perform autopsies in the city in the early 1900s? And you said, but Scarlett, you just said he did them. That's right. Do you know where he got the bodies? He bought his poor deceased patients that could not afford burial plots. But that's not the story I want to tell you. I want to tell you that on the second floor they had really wonderful balls and parties there. And it was hard for people to find babysitters, just like now. So they brought their children, and the children would play upstairs with the billiard balls on the billiard tables. You remember doing that when you couldn't shoot one? You'd roll them across with your friends, maybe throwing them at them, depends on how mean you were. And then someone said, well, if we roll them downstairs, whoever follows it gets to see what mom and dad are doing. This is so much fun. And I'm sure it went on for quite some time. Until a little girl rolled all the way down the stairs and died. Here's the thing. The Hamilton Turner is now a bed and breakfast. There are no billiard tables upstairs, but the guests complain about this at night. That's right. So please stay at the Hamilton Turner because they have been lonely during COVID, and I know they would love for you to stay there and listen to the bowling ball rolling down the stairs. Now, as we come here, this is very important to me. I want to tell you a story that we call a tall tale. Now, my mother, very old-fashioned Southern woman, tells me that at the base of every tall tale is some piece of history. That was factual, but we've gotten bigger and bigger. They tell me that Renee Rondelier was born on the other side of the cemetery. They tell me that Renee Rondelier weighed 19 pounds. They tell me that Renee Rondelier's mom survived the birth. Right. But then this nice lady from Kentucky 6 months ago told me that she had someone in her community that had a 19-pound baby. All right, we'll take that in consideration, but this is now and that was then. They tell me he grew to be 7 foot tall. They tell me he was mentally disabled. So we'll take it into faith. He probably didn't weigh 19 pounds. He was probably just an extremely large baby. His mom probably did live. He was mentally handicapped and he wasn't 7 foot tall. He might have been 6 foot tall. But let me tell you this. No one would play with him. Now, I have a Down syndrome child, and I want to tell you that everyone in this century is nice to disabled people, but they are not. They call him bad names, and I know they do it to all people, but he doesn't know you're calling him a bad name, and I'm kind of grateful for that. I can't imagine what they called him. I can't imagine what they said to Renee Rondelet, but he grew up playing in that graveyard all by himself. And he was happy with his company a lot like my Henry is. And then one day they started to find dead squirrels with their necks broke, dead rabbits with their necks broke, and the people go, you know it was Renee because he's crazy. And then one day they found a dead girl with her neck broke. And everyone goes, wait, that was that crazy Renee. He must have killed her. It's the 1800s, y'all. They didn't exactly always call the police back then. Sometime later, they found 2 dead girls in there. And they took their ropes and torches and they were going to hang Renee. But the family talked him out of it. They was like, no, there's no way our son, who's like a little kid inside, did this. And the city of Savannah put a guard out there. And they built a really tall brick wall around the house. And everything went fine for several years, and then we had one of those fires. See, y'all see all these bricks now. Back in the early 1800s, most of it was hard to pine. And if your neighborhood caught on fire, everything burned. And we think the guard left to go save his own family. Sometime the next week, they found 2 more dead girls in there. And they were totally convinced that Renee had done it. They took their ropes and their torches and they hung poor Renee, but they couldn't bury him in the consecrated ground. So they moved him out by, where did they take him, honey? By the Indigo or something? Near the Indigo. I mean, I really wouldn't worry about it, y'all, because if you see the ghost of Renee, he's almost 7 foot tall and he just says hi. The thing is, after they killed him, they found another dead girl and another dead girl and another dead girl and another dead girl. And all the people of Savannah said, if it goes to Renee, come to kill him. But what I really want to know is where's Dexter when you needed him anyway? And if you don't know who he was, let me tell you, we didn't have detectives or forensic science, but Dexter is a serial killer who kills other serial killers. I'm just saying, we couldn't believe someone who looked like you or me could kill other people. We didn't know what to do with it, so we blamed poor Renee Rondelet. So that's one of our tall tales that I'm thoroughly convinced has a foot in the truth. But it's not a pretty truth, so we like to cover it up. Now we're going by the Pirate's House right down here. Has anyone got the privilege of seeing it yet? I know it's a, they say tourist trap. They actually have very good fried chicken, and y'all, I'm a connoisseur of fried chicken. If I tell you get good fried chicken, you can. I wish fried chicken had the same thing as salmon, because I'd just like to have it every day. I just really don't want to do the other. And I can live without pizza, but fried chicken, I have to go sneak it. But that's my sin, so let's worry about something else. Right down here is the Pirate's House. Now, what y'all may not know is Oglethorpe did not allow whiskey and rum in our city because he didn't want pirates here. It's the main part of it. We could have beer and wine. Someone pointed out last night we might have made gin. I don't know, but they didn't want the pirates coming up. So right down here is ye old Seafarers Tavern and Inn as of the 1740s. See, when Oglethorpe was here, we didn't let the pirates in, and in fact, that little whitewashed house right there was our oldest house in Savannah. It was built in 1734. Now, when he left, we gathered all this together, named it ye old Seafarers Tavern and Inn. But the rum cellar right around there dug huge taverns right under the English fort, as big as this bus, y'all, bricked in taverns. They brought huge casks of whiskey and rum in, and then when they were bringing it in, the men on the ship that didn't want to be with them would jump ship to get away from them. They'd risk their life with the tidal currents and the alligators. So they'd invite the young men of Savannah in for a sip or two of rum. When they drink a couple, they'd put a little poison in it. And when they passed out, they'd push them in the rum cellar. And if they survived the fall into the rum cellar, they'd wake up the next day with a new career out at sea and they'd never come home again. But if they were hurt in any way, they killed them. They cut their bodies up and they spread them through the tunnels and they carried the living over the dead. We've walled those tunnels up now, y'all, but they say they still hear people down there. And if our dinner tonight had run tonight, they would take you down there. And it's a very small room we take you into. It's the last remaining safe part of it. I have a friend that's gone where the electric runs and the tunnels are still there. Totally safe. But the city worries about safety now, so they won't let you go down there. So I go, so are the bodies there? And they're like, oh, Lord, Scarlett, of course not. But you had to ask, right? You were thinking it too. But please go there and run into some happy or not happy ghosts, because I think everyone's welcome in Savannah. Now, as we come around here, just ignore the ugly parking garage. They built that in 1962. They weren't really into aesthetics back then. The next story I have to tell you is about a ghost that's not scary. Okay, it's just not. But I find it fascinating because the Davenport house, the house that started historical Savannah, has a yellow tabby cat that's been seen for over 100 years. He's been seen so often that the docents have put a yellow stuffed tabby on the 3rd floor stairway. They see him purring in the window. They told me, you see him, like out of the corner of your eye, you see a cat, you can kind of hear him purring. You go to pet him, he's gone. They tell me that he goes out to play with the Girl Scouts, walks around their legs, 1 block up on the right, and he disappears through the front door. And the pictures that are taken of him are in the upper right-hand room of the Davenport house with the little girl holding him. I don't know, I'm just telling you, not scary, but you gotta admire a ghost with tenacity, don't you? Now, we almost tore the Davenport house down to make a parking lot for the funeral home across the street. That's why it's the house that saved Savannah. So right here. The house across the street is the Keno Mansion. It was a funeral home for over 20 years. In the right-hand room right there, oh, it's a bed and breakfast now for adults only. Where you can have breakfast now, that's where you could view your loved ones. Don't you like multi-purpose here? I'll tell you this. William Kehoe built that house for his wife and 10 children. Back then, people didn't hovercraft. If your children showed up to eat, you knew they were alive and well. My mother confirmed this detail. She's 81. I was like, are you kidding? She goes, no, Scarlett, because there were no snacks and you better show up for your meals. I was like, okay. Because that's just really hard for me to get, but okay. If she says so, my mom tells the truth. So William Kehoe's twin 5-year-old boys didn't show up for lunch. People were not too concerned. I have a hard time fathoming that, but it must have been true. When they didn't show up for dinner, I get turned around because my back's always to it over there. Everyone started looking for them. They had torches in the street. They're looking everywhere for those 2 little precious 5-year-old boys. They can't find them anywhere. The next morning, in the room that was the viewing room, where you can now have breakfast, they found a little foot hanging out of the chimney. When they pulled him out, they found his brother up ahead of him. They think one went up and got stuck, and when the other one went to get him, they both suffocated. They say Mr. Kehoe was so devastated, he had the chimney sealed in that room, and he put twin angel boys on the mantle. But remember, I told you it's a bed and breakfast for adults only now, right? You know what they complain about at night? 2nd floor, children riding their bikes up and down the hallway every night. if they're very loud, they wake up with a little pug-nosed boy touching them. Or maybe Mommy pulls the covers up over them because Mommy didn't leave either. But please stay at the Q house. They've been lonely as well. I did have a couple on here. She went, oh, you didn't tell me it was haunted. Oh, it's pretty. Thank you, guys. Okay. All right, look up and to the left. Left up. Up. Is she there? Oh, yeah. Hi.
Oh my.
I know it's just a mannequin, but we're in a labor dispute with the ghost, and she won't stand with it. That's Anna. Anna is in room 204. If you stay there, you have to sign a waiver. They tell me Miley Cyrus actually stayed there. You have to sign a waiver. She likes to push men out of the bed and steal women's lingerie. They say her rocking chair still rocks. But she was a bride that was jilted with child, and she threw herself onto the pavers below and never left room 204. Oh yes, and please stay in room 204. I'm sure they would like it. I'm looking, because if he's here, he always scares me. Do we have someone here? Oh dear. All right, what did I tell you? If you leave with a ghost, we're not looking for you. Your family better love you a lot. We clear on this, right? Family loves you, family looks. We're not looking. Dang on it. He's very handsome too. Please don't do it. It's not worth it, people. Hi, honey. Don't take my people.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The name's Jacob Taylor. I was the second mate of the brig Hetty of Philadelphia. We was docked here in the port Savannah doing the normal refit and resupply. Little did I know this day would end with my body in a bag in Christchurch Cemetery. It all started on the west side of the city in the seething din of sailor bar and brothel. The deceivers came over on 2 ships, de la Vengeance and de la Francais, French privateer ships in town under the guise of doing the normal refit and resupply, when in reality they was here to press gang new crew members. Pickings was slim, and they was only able to recruit 1 boy, barely even a man. He went off to brag to his friends of his newfound recruitment. Well, his friends quickly talk him back to his senses. Frenchmen didn't take too kindly to this. A fight ensued. 1 American was killed, as well as a Frenchman. So, the next night, me and my mates, we go out to the Eagle's Tavern looking to have a little dance with some of the finest ladies Savannah has to offer. Well, these ladies have already promised to dance with the Frenchman. A brawl ensued. Only this time the Frenchman was properly armed. One of them shot me right in my gut. That's how I died. 34 of them Frenchmen was arrested, but the next day all but 7 is released. And so they hurry their way down towards the docks, trying to make their way out of town. But they're met by an angry and grieving mob who burn the La Vengeance down to the waterline. 8 hours of hand-to-hand combat go on like this until a couple clever Savannah sailors set a burning barge of pitch down with the river's current, until slowly but surely, with 1 large explosion, Savannah riots ended. You can still visit my body in Christchurch Cemetery, now known as Colonial Park Cemetery, but if you do, please steer clear of Frenchmen on boat. Good evening. Thanks so much.
I think they're all here. Okay. In the garden that I was peeking in, I always do it and never see anything. But when this house was built, it was the first house, they say, in the United States to have indoor plumbing, 1819. But it had lead pipes. And the first lady of the manor died from failing health. And they say lead poisoning, right? And that she haunts the garden. So I always look, I always forget to take my phone to like try to take pictures, but I always picture her walking back there in her beautiful gown or whatever, wondering why she's dead. Right. Well, you know, failing health was cancer, tuberculosis, congestive heart failure, any lead poisoning, anything we could not explain that you were dying from was just called failing health back then, and it was actually a diagnosis. Now, as we go around here, we are headed to Wright Square. In the daytime, Wright Square, we simply mention the Gordon statue in the middle for the Central Georgia Railroad. But we don't care about that tonight. What we want to talk about tonight is that between 1733 to 1735, over 500 people were hung there. It was English law. And people always go, why? Well, we didn't have prisons or jails. They could flog you, fine you, send you away, or hang you. What it means is you could hang for being hungry and stealing bread back then. The other thing is that's the first graveyard in Savannah. And the only thing that marks it's a plaque on the wall on the other side of the Tomochichi courthouse, which will come around. I want you to notice that there's almost no Spanish moss in Wright Square. And I'm going to tell you one of the worst stories that I know about it. In 1835, a young woman named Alice Riley came to Savannah. She was an indentured servant, and Alice was married at 14. She was married, and she thought she was coming to freedom here. But she was bound to a man who indentured her that lived on Hutchinson Island. That's where the Weston is, y'all, across the river. See, we didn't like that man. We sent him over there because he'd had run-ins with the law, and he tended the cattle for the people of Savannah over on Hutchinson Island because we weren't fond of him. But he indentured poor Alice, and he kept her in his room, this 14-year-old girl, made her take care of him, and I'll leave the rest up to your imagination. When I first heard that Alice had drowned him with the tub, in a tub, I was like, yeah, that's great. And my brain goes, no, that's not what happened. I was like, oh man, I hate it when you have a master's in history and I don't. She said, Alice was shaving him with a straight edge blade. And she slit him from ear to ear. Sorry, y'all. My chiropractor loves me. And as the blood was pouring out of his body, she pushed his head into the basin of blood and water in front of him. And then she and her husband ran away. They were probably trying to get down to Florida where the Spanish were for mercy. They didn't make it that far. They came here, they got caught, they hung her poor husband, they left him swinging in the square for 3 days. But when they went to hang Alice, she said, Anna, you cannot hang me, I'm your child. She tells them she's pregnant. They don't believe her. I don't want you to miss this. Right there is the marker that says you're on the first cemetery in Savannah. You really are, right here. First. Did we move the bodies?
Now it's going to start a little hot because
And a lot of them are right there on the New York site. It was 1753, y'all, when they closed this. They don't believe Alice is pregnant. They take her back over where the CVS now stands. That's where our jail was. No one works there after midnight. Evidently, there's something in the basement that keeps screaming to let them out. When it came time to have the baby, you would have thought they were having mercy on her, but they wouldn't. They wouldn't. They were out there. They were taking wagers and bets right there in that park. They were having picnics, wanting to see the first woman in Savannah hang. And the day she had her baby, they took him from her. And they took her kicking and screaming into that square, and they left her swinging for 3 days. You know what they did with her baby? They sent him downriver to an orphanage where no wet nurse would nurse him because he was the son of a murderess and therefore bad by blood. And he died a few days later. They say that the ghost that haunts this square comes in the daytime when a baby carriage is going through it with the top over it. And a frantic young woman runs out and she pushes the top off because she's looking for her baby. And she can't believe she can't find him. Now, a lot of the ghost gods will tell you that it's Alice that pulls the moss from the trees. But I already told you we hung over 500 people there. So I have no idea who does it. But I'll tell you this, the moss never gets long in Wright Square. Now, we're headed to the Telfair, and we're going to go inside that beautiful, beautiful museum. Telfair Square is the only square in the city that is named for the mansion that stands in front of it. It is on layers of history, as I will tell you when we get in. But Miss Mary Telfair, who left that to us in 1875, with a fortune of almost $750 million in today's money, left it in charge of Dr. Carl Brandt to turn it into a museum. Right down there. She had some rules. We call her the Lady of Stipulations. She wanted no eating in her house, no drinking in her house, no alcohol, no smoking. The one that really gets me is no frivolity involved. So really, we have to go in there and have absolutely no fun, people. That's who she was. And I will tell you, she left to the lowbrow people of Savannah, these are her words, the highbrow place of art. Because she was worried about us. But Dr. Carl Brandt commissioned all those statues. All 5 of them were done by Jay Walsh, the guy who did a lot of statues in Bonaventure. He's very talented. We're going to go in there. It doesn't matter which side of the stairs you go up. Please take your care going down. When we get, can you make, my friend that had an issue coming up, do you need an elevator to go in there, or can you make it up those stairs on the side? Okay, once we're at that main floor, there's an elevator to take her to the next floor if she needs it, if she can get up that one. Now, if she couldn't, I have an elevator down here. I'll just have to aggravate them and ask them. I don't mind asking them at all. We go in, we're going to go right past the main desk, and we're going to make a right into the red room. It's a beautiful red room, and I'll tell you everything I know about it, and I will show you all about the octagon room and the dining room. I won't leave out where we're allowed to go, I promise. If someone's gone just a little too long and they need a bathroom, ask the security guard at the front, and they'll tell you where the bathrooms are. Okay? Are we good? Now we get to go in there. So let's go have fun in the beautiful, beautiful Telfair. Be very careful. Okay. Watch your step there. Yeah. This one's not as bad as some of them, but just take your time. It's okay. We're all here to have fun. They say stand over here so I'm sorry, honey. You mind if I go over here? It's okay. I just have a better thing right here. Okay. Do I almost have everyone? Someone was. Yeah, I got it. Okay. Now look around this beautiful room that William J. always built what he wanted. This was built in 1820. And I look at this oval room, and the first thing I think about every night is where's the secret rooms? Come on, y'all. This is a rectangular building. What they do with the extra space, right? Anyone else? But you see this beautiful room with all this handmade wood molding and the plaster, the fascia, which is all made by hand. Don't you think things like that? Well, they tell me that in this room, they hear balls going on, like people dancing and silk swirling and harp music. But Mary Telfair was what they called a high Presbyterian. That's what we call like a conservative Christian now. She didn't believe in that. Remember what I told you about layers of ghosts, like at the Sorrel Weed house? This house was built where the governor's mansion for England stood for almost 100 years. After the revolution, we tore it down. The Telfairs acquired it, and they built this beautiful mansion. So they say the balls you hear here, extravagant sounds and stuff, are from that time. And they say that where the art gallery is now, that was the courtyard where a lot of duels and other things happened out there that might not have been savory. So we have a lot of layers of ghosts that could be here. And that's what always makes it more interesting. Now, Mary Telfair had these rules, but I want you to know this. In this house, those lights are on the wall. If we're lucky enough tonight for the lights to go off, they're on the wall. They're not on a computer somewhere. You're allowed to touch the beautiful marble fireplace. I do it almost every time I'm in here because they let me. And it's made by hand and gorgeous. You can touch the stairwells going up. The iron's all made by hand. Mary just was particular about what she wanted in her home. And it's not bad or good. It's just with Mary Telfair. When we go upstairs, you can see a lot of art that you probably saw in your art history books if you took that telltale class or took a couple. But Dr. Carl Brandt had so much money, he went all over the world buying art. And before COVID hit, we had a Rembrandt Rubens exhibit at the Jepson, which they own here. This owns it, because they had so much art to trade. So that tells you what they've got in their store that we don't always see because they change it, but we have no idea the whole acquisitions they have. We're going to go upstairs to the main gallery, and I'll tell you my ghost stories up there. I really wish she turned the lights off on y'all, but it hadn't happened to me in like 2 months. And you never know what's going to happen, and then it does freak you out if they go off tonight. It really does, because you're going, dang it, where's the light? Even if it's 2 seconds, it feels too long. But we'll go upstairs and do that. But you're welcome to take pictures in here. In here, they do prefer you don't use a flash. That's just the museum rules, okay? And then if you need the elevator to go to the next floor, it's right back there. And everybody else will take the stairs right up. Enjoy. It's amazing when you look at that timeline for museums, that when they opened this, there was a museum in Philadelphia and one in New York, and little tiny Savannah had a museum. And it was free for almost 100 years. 100 years. But this is all original. All that was made by hand. Now this they added after Dr. Carl Brandt got it. Because this would have been the courtyard that would have led to the servants' quarters and everything. But they made it blend in really well. And they put this beautiful, beautiful art up. Now some of these pieces never change. And I'll wait for everybody. But I bet everybody we don't change the artist on the top. And if anyone was looking for the bird girl from Midnight in the Garden of Naval, she's upstairs. They hide her away in the locked door up there so we can't get to her. They took her out of Bonaventure Cemetery because people were trying to chip pieces off of her. It's okay, she's bronze, they can. But someone would have stolen her. So they put her away for safekeeping after Midnight in the Garden of Naval came out. Now, we don't change the artist at the top. We don't change the extremely large pieces. I call that the circle of life. That is not its name. She's going young and come out old. I ask you, what should it be? And well, change the Black Knight killing the king. Again, that is not its name. That's just my name, but what else would you call it? Beautiful, isn't it? You're allowed to walk around and look at it. This is my favorite part. Ooh, here's some more. You just never know which grade it's.
Look at the babies.
She's crazy.
Look at the babies. Look at they babies. They little kids. They crying.
I don't like that.
I know.
I like this one.
Yeah. They all pretty good.
I'm taking random pictures so I can go back and see if we see people work.
There's all kind of 2 grand pianos in here. But you remember I told you she had rules. Let me make sure I'm doing this right now. Okay. She had rules. She didn't want you to eat or drink or have alcohol or smoke or have none of it. Well, by the 1970s, we forgot her rules. We just did. And we chose to go on. They had a fabulous party in here. Phenomenal. There was wine and food, and everyone was having a wonderful time. And it was the 70s, and they're having sex in the They said the more the men drank, the more they thought she was wearing. That is Mary Butler on the wall right there. Those men thought she was laying at them. You know what they did when they got just drunk enough? They took her off the wall. A bunch of them took her off the wall and put her in one of the rooms upstairs, and when they shut the door, every light in this house went out, and they tell me they could not regulate the thermostat until they put her portrait back on the wall.
Nobody played the piano when we came up here, right?
No. Did you hear something? See? He heard the piano. I'm telling you, different people hear the piano. There's nothing in here right now. It's okay. You're not the first guest I've had hear it, but I've had other people hear the piano play. Good. I got you. So, we decided not to have big parties in here, right? We'll be respectful, we won't do it again. So you know what happens? Not too long after, out in Telfair Square, they have a huge white tent, black tie affair for fundraising. They are having wine and food and having a wonderful time. And when the host comes to speak to the guest, he gets on the front porch right after. And when he's up there speaking, this unexplained thunderstorm comes up, and it's whipping the tent, and it starts raining on all the people, and they're running. And the next day, in the paper, it says that thunderstorm happened in a 1-block radius. That was around 1976. I had a bus driver who told me, he said, I was bartending there because I was 21. I said, no, you weren't. He goes, yeah, I was, before I went to work at the ports. He goes, and it really happened. I was like, woo, that's pretty cool. But now they hold their big fundraisers at the Jepson Center and at the Owen Thomas House and in the addition back behind there. But see, this 6-bedroom mansion, of course this wasn't part of it, that was her home, and she had rules. But she really wanted us to enjoy the art. So I know that she would enjoy very much the art here. Some of the other things that have happened to me here, because I've been doing this a few years here. I told you the piano's been played here. I've been in this room when the lights upstairs went off, this one went off, and downstairs went off. It was like an orchestra. Boom, 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 up and down like that. I was like, that's so cool. That happened once. The other thing that's happened, the docent that used to always be in here, she'd go, I was gonna go after one of your guests because I thought they went to the bathroom without asking. I was like, oh, shucks, I'm sorry. I always tell them to ask. She goes, it's okay. I followed that tall man downstairs and then he disappeared. She goes, but the water was running in the bathroom. I was like, ah! She goes, I know, right? And then one particularly handsome docent, I asked him, I go, does it ever bother you to be here? Because they've told me those doors open up by themselves upstairs sometimes. And the lights go off and on by themselves when they're here. He goes, well, one night when I turned off every light in the place, I ran to my car because I just couldn't take it anymore. So it's like, cool. But yeah, all the lights are on the walls here. But the art is phenomenal. And they have a lot of it. So I want you to enjoy it. And that to me is one of the best parts, even if nothing happens here. But all that, I've experienced all that here. These weird things with lights and all. The very first thing that ever happened to me here, and we have time for this story. I'll show you the picture when we get down to the dining room. But that picture was hanging on the wall. It was hanging by Mary. And I came upstairs, and I'd been in here a lot in the daytime because the guides around town, they'll give us a discount if we want to go to the museums. And the picture was right there on the bottom, and it was swinging very slowly from the right to the left. And I was like, ah! So I ran downstairs, I go, that picture's moving, and they go, like that. That's what they did to me. I was like, ah. Something, and no one touched it. None of us. I've never had a guest touch any of the portraits. And it kept going very slowly to the right, to the left. I'll show you the exact picture it was when we go downstairs. But the next thing you're going to look at is the dining room. I'm sorry we don't get to go upstairs, but I will tell you this. If you like museums, for the price of one ticket, you can go to the Owen Thomas, the Jepson, and this place for one ticket, price for 7 days. So it's a good deal in the city if you like this stuff. I'm not kidding, it was this one. It was doing this. I kid you not. Please, you're welcome to go in the dining room. Yeah, it was moving very, very slowly. Side to side. I was completely freaked out.
Penny.
Now, there's two fireplaces in there because these were people's winter homes, although the shelters lived here more than most. And they would have burned in the winter, they would have wanted to stay warm. And the wallpaper's not original, but it looks like it would have been in the 1870s. So, yeah, people would come in and out. You have plenty of room.
Go up.
And after you leave that room, we go to the octagon room. But I can tell you, you wouldn't have wanted to be invited to one of Miss Mary's parties. She wasn't the most fun hostess in the world. There wouldn't have been a party. There would have maybe been some reading, maybe a violin. But she was just notorious for being rather dour. In the octagon room down there, the wood panel's not original, but it looks like it would have. And again, y'all, my little Nancy Drew brain goes, well, where's the secret? Because I keep thinking, you know, when Jay built his houses for people that had so much money and they could do whatever they wanted, what did they do with the other space? Now, the globes at the back, y'all, were something that wealthy people always wanted. The fact that there's two in there, even though they're faded the way they are today, they were made by hand. So it would have been a big deal. And you can imagine, this was built in 1820, 6 bedrooms. It's fabulously big. And that's the Telfair's original furniture. Now I'll tell you down too long. There's no one in here poking. Okay. 2 years, no, I got the timeline right. September 2019, I was standing in here, like this, and something touched me on both sides of my waist. I had the most horrible goosebumps and I jumped out. And I was like, because I couldn't believe it happened. It's never happened again. But what I can tell you is this. I was doing this about 4 months ago. I was like going, yeah, see this? All the lights are on the walls, and I did this, and that light went off, and then that light went off, and I was like, okay, I didn't do that. But I wouldn't stand back there for 6 months, because I was that just like, okay, something touched me. And all my guests are like, is she kidding? I'm like, well, I haven't said something touched me since then. Something touched me on both sides of my waist. And I was like, okay. But that's the best one that ever happened here, because I still get goosebumps when I tell you the story every Wednesday night, because I only do this on Wednesday. But please enjoy, and after you're done, if you've got all your pictures, we're gonna go out the front door and back to the thing. But I can't make her do anything. Y'all must be just very, very good patrons. You haven't upset her. Nothing's gone off on tonight. Well, we did have the one piano chord, right, upstairs. Someone heard the piano play. But, yeah, you just never know what you're gonna get. But sometimes I get ding-dongs when there's nobody around. You know what that is, right? If you go outside the carpet and there it goes ding-dong, ding-dong. Well, sometimes we get those, but we hadn't had anything tonight. So just enjoy and revel in it, and then we'll go out, and I'm glad y'all are here when you're not too hot to enjoy the city. Because trust me, in a few months, everyone will be on. And we'll come in here and did you come? Did you enjoy it? Did you got to see everything in the river and everything? Isn't that wonderful? It's supposed to be yeah. Well, you know, he put on the cover, but she didn't know the fence or whatever. She's not really real with the light of it. Yeah. I got one of my pictures yet? You're going to love it. Okay. Are we going to wall walking first or you? Okay. If you think that I've got very small reading around, so you see giant roasters and Gracie.
I smell smoke in that octagon room, and then like all the sides started like getting cold and like tingling. And I was like,
Yeah,
do you smell smoke? And I was like,
down by the river, straight out on the right, there used to be a news column in the 70s. They used to let this man hang out there with his friends. This patch, I mean, that's I know it's true. She said they just ignored him.
You were a history major?
I have a history minor. I had a lot of minors because I didn't want to finish them. I have an English minor, a history minor, and a political science degree with emphasis in public administration. Owned a food truck for 14 years, but this is way more fun than most anything I've done in my adult life. 8th graders always think I must be a teacher, so that's a privilege too. All right, everybody okay? Y'all been delightful. Thank you, honey.
Okay.
Watch your step. Oh, these are iron. They used to be everywhere. The planters, most of them have been like, they belong to other people now. People with them don't leave them on their porches anymore. Be very careful coming down, y'all. Yeah, these statues. One of the artists you're going to see that a lot of the artwork out at Bonaventure, he did. He was so prolific. He just loved Savannah. Y'all be very careful. Watch your step. Y'all have all been so delightful. I'm sorry she didn't have lights off for y'all. It's just not something I can make her do, you know. I mean, it's like, hey, Max, turn the lights off tonight. It'd be really cool. You did. I think it a lot. Please turn the lights off. Do something fun. How are you? You coming up there? Yeah. I just not probable that they took that space and didn't do anything with it. Or if they did, it's very disappointing.
Yeah.
Yep. We got just a few more. Oh, okay. Okay, did y'all enjoy that? It's pretty wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's very wonderful. Just take your time. Just want everybody to be safe. Yeah, we're gearing up for Crazy Town. It's coming. This year we won't come downtown. Well, that's not true. My daughter works at Garibaldi's as a hostess. I'll have to figure out how to get her to work here in St. Patty's Day. That should be an adventure, to say the least. Okay? All right, for a lot of y'all, you know this story. Just don't talk right now and let me do my version of it. So, Miss Mary Telfair, who left us this museum, never married y'all. But what they tell me is she went to Europe in the early 1800s with her sister Margaret. She fell madly in love with a man named William B. Hodgson. Do you know what happened? He married her sister! And wait, it gets worse. Because Miss Mary lived with them for the rest of her life. All three of them right there. Can you imagine the gossip? And don't think Twitter started gossip, because that's not true. And then Miss Mary outlived them and she got all the money. And she left us a women's hospital and a museum. And she fought for women's right to vote long before we got it. So she was a wonderful woman. But her sister took her down. Now, on Jones Street, I didn't mention it when we crossed it, but that's the beautiful brick street that's always in Southern Living. Almost every year of my whole childhood, I've seen that street. Well, they tell me it's one of the most haunted streets in Savannah. On December 28th of 2019, I was doing a haunted wedding reception tour. Yes, we do those. And everyone was on here, the bride, the groom, everybody. And they said, oh, we're going to get a lot of ghosts tonight. And I go, well, I hope so. I really hope so. One thing that did happen on here is about where you're sitting, someone kept taking pictures of their friends and all they got were apparitions. That happened on this trolley. The other thing that happened was this man said, oh, Jones Street's haunted? I go, yes. He goes, I take a lot of pictures of my wife down at the end on this beautiful marble staircase. I go, I know that marble staircase. It's fabulous. It has like 15 steps going up. It's fantastic. I go, I'd love to see them. He goes, sure. Everyone else got off the trolley and he proceeded to show me the pictures. Except when he did this, he goes, that's not it. That's not it. Oh, that's not it. Oh my goodness. What? Oh my. Oh, and I'm like, what? 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 He goes, my wife's not in any of the pictures.
Oh gosh.
So I told this story to some 8th graders about 2 weeks later. And this little 8th grade girl goes, did you tell him? Did I tell him what? Did you tell him? Did I tell him what? Did you tell him that he's married to a vampire? I said, no, she was standing right there. She goes, what'd you say? I go, you're going to have to take those pictures over again. She goes, oh, that was a good idea. After that happened, this medium told me that people can be blocked in pictures by apparitions, and I saw it happen twice on that particular tour. I don't know if it's because they were like looking for ghosts at that wedding or whatever, but it really was certainly one of the weirder things that's ever happened to me on a tour. The other thing I can tell you tonight is we take you back. If we picked you up at the bank, you will get off at the bank to your vehicle. If we picked you up at your hotel, we will take you back. Miss Sandra and I do accept gratuity. We split it 50-50. Not one of you wants to drive in a car with me or any moving vehicle. That's what my family says, so I'm telling you honestly. And this lovely woman makes sure you get there safely, and she doesn't want to do the tour, and she lets me talk, which is fun. But trust me, I'm going to incorporate your PM note into my next tour, because I do believe you heard it. It was probably just a chord or something upstairs. I can't tell you, but it's funny. There's sometimes 3 grand pianos in that place, and I've heard people hear all of them. It's really odd. The other thing is, can you imagine all the storage for all the grand pianos that weren't there tonight? And all the art.
That's what I've wondered.
There's a lot of art. He had unlimited brain to buy whatever he wanted. It's phenomenal. The other thing I want you to remember is, it doesn't matter in 10 years if you remember my stories, but what I want you to think about when y'all are at home with your family is how much fun you had in Savannah. And you had fun on that ghost tour with that crazy girl named Scarlett. And it doesn't matter if you remember it. Just remember you love your family and you had fun. Have a good night, y'all. Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate you for coming. Be careful, darlings.